Okay, we're starting this again. I think I see some action in my audio. We had some technical difficulties, so I want to welcome everybody back as you're coming back. This is the monthly Q&A. So this is the monthly live where I will answer your questions from the Breath Club. So if you're not a part of the Breath Club, that's okay. You can go to my website jessecoomer.com, or you can just simply go to Patreon and you can find Midwestern Method. Or you can go to our landing page. There's all kinds of different ways you can join the Breath Club. Here in just about an hour, we're going to get into the monthly breathwork party. And this is where the entire Breath Club will get together and we have guided breathwork session together on Zoom. We've got people from all around the world in this club. It's really just an amazing group. So let me know you're here. Let me know where you're from. Let me know that you can hear me, because that is why I had to exit the last live. My audio was going out. So anyway, I'm here in Chicago. We just got a little bit of snow, but there's snow all over the place. If you're in a snow-covered area, loud and clear, awesome. Good to have you here. Thanks for sticking with me, JR. We got a lot of really cool things to talk about today. We've got some differences in maybe some of the advice that you've heard, especially when it comes to mouth taping. There's things that, for the longest time, I've been an advocate of mouth taping myself. I have been mouth taping off and on, occasionally. What happens is I'll mouth tape and then I'll just run out and then I'll just be like, and then I'll forget about it. And then what'll happen is I'll snore or something like that. And my wife's like, yo, why aren't we mouth taping? And that's what she says all the time. She says yo all the time. She's just like she's super gangster. Anyway, so do you hear that? Yeah. We're also going to, hey, you know what? Just a PSA, if you are in an area where it's having incredibly cold temperatures like I am right now, the air is incredibly dry. I've got the humidifiers working, but it kind of tickles the old sinuses. So let me know you're here. Let me know you can hear me. I'm going to jump right into some of these Q&As. So what happens is on these, if you're in a certain tier, you can ask me questions and I'll talk about it. Whether you want to talk about, I can talk about a certain topic that you like. So sometimes people just say, hey, talk about this. Other times people have very specific questions. And this time we have two people who were sort of, I guess, very specific. I want to read you what they wrote. When people direct message me, I usually don't read the whole thing out. I usually just kind of give you a summary. Sometimes people just want to keep things private, and that's fine. Other times, it's something where hey, they're asking publicly, so I assume they're okay with me reading these out in front of everybody. So the first one comes from Eric Lindquist, and Eric is he's been with us for, I think, Eric, you have been with me from the beginning, and I don't know if I mentioned this either on this one or the last time we talked. This Breath Club is turning 5 years old in March. So 5 years this Breath Club has been going. Eric, I'm sure, has been with me all those years. So thank you so much for hanging with me all this time, Eric. Eric says, okay, so you sort of have to get to know Eric. And the thing is, I kind of get to know people. Like if you're in the club and you post a lot and you interact a lot, like we've got hundreds of people in the club, but it's nice to, occasionally I get to know people. And actually, Eric, back whenever we had the founders group, he was somebody I got to know. So anyway, all right, enough. Here's the question. Eric says, another breathing. I've been trying to be much more conscious of only nasal breathing. Good. He says, I've noticed many other avenues in breath, Qigong, Tai Chi meditation, and some physical exercise that coaches and trainers and gurus, etc., recommend to inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Have you heard this? Right? So you might have heard it on some of my sessions. Some of my very first sessions I used to do in through the nose, out through the mouth. There are some techniques that are in through the nose, out through the mouth, like sniff, sniff, poo. So so that's what we're talking about. He says, is there any instance where a nasal inhale and exhale via the mouth is preferred over, for instance, in and out through the nose? Or would only nasal be a better choice when it's possible to use only nasal? Great question. So, this is the epic answer, and then I'm going to unpack it. So thank you so much for that question, Eric. First of all, it depends, right? It depends. It always depends. But let's go into it. So whenever you're referring to breathwork practices, you're referring to specific things that are focused specifically on breath, but other times that have movement involved. Now, when I train athletes, so I train athletes to really enhance how they breathe and how they perform. When we're doing that, much of that is learning how to breathe through the nose and also learning how to breathe through the mouth. So a lot of times we demonize mouth breathing as if it's something we should never do, which is not true either, right? So the reality is most people breathe too much through their nose or through their mouth, right? So many people breathe through their mouth all the time or way too much and avoid, the other. So most of the time we're focusing on how to expand your nasal breathing, how to improve nasal breathing and make it so that you can nasal breathe whenever you're in high energy situations. However, there are some times whenever inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth is preferred in athletic performance. And there are some times whenever I say specifically, I want you breathing in and out through the mouth. Oh my God, right? And that's where the difference is between, so when you look at social media and you look at YouTube, you're getting a pretty long lag time. Why is that, right? So why are you getting the lag time? If you're like me, back a long time ago, I used to try to figure things out just by kind of piecing them together on the internet and through social media. And then I decided I'm actually going to do my research. And I'm fortunate that early on I was able to, I have incredibly knowledgeable mentors, not just with breath, but also with neuroscience, psychology, and all these things, right? And this is, so whenever I train people, I'm giving you this is like the cutting edge of where we are. So there's a lag time in social media and on Instagram and YouTube, where a lot of times people are still saying on social media, I breathe in and out through the nose. You never breathe in and out through the mouth because it's bad for you. And for a little while, that was the cutting edge. People were thinking that. What we've learned now is that there is a good time and place for mouth breathing. That there is a good time and place for in through the nose, out through the mouth. That there is a good time and place for in through the nose, out through the nose. It's kind of like when you go to the dentist and you say, how often should I be flossing? The dentist can probably just say more than you are now, right? So that's part of it. So when it comes to in and out through the nose for when it comes to like integrated breath work, the breath work we're going to have for the breath party coming up, in and out through the nose is preferable. Okay, this is for a few reasons. One, anytime you can breathe in and out through the nose, you are doing your nose a favor. So it's not just because your nose hydrates and it activates the right muscles and it cools or warms the air. It's not just for all those reasons. One of the reasons why it's so good for you to exhale through your nose is because it rehydrates your nose. All the turbinates and all these other things. Like there's a reason why it goes both ways. So you're doing something very good for your nose. You're also getting, for instance, if you're into things like in the language of breath, we have a very deep exercise called the listening exercise. If you'd like to learn more about it, it's on our website. But or it's in my book too. I don't know if I have, let's see. I don't know. I think I'm out of language of breath books. Like I did a signing and I was at a retreat and I'm out of, hey, that's a good problem to have, right? But if you read Language of Breath, I describe this technique. And if you do the online course, I guide you through it, or you can go to one of our retreats. But basically on this one, it is in through the nose, out through the nose. And there's a few different reasons why. Now, having said this, if you are a fan of some of the older, more traditional forms of breath work, like rebirthing, holotropic breath work, and a lot of the things that came from that, like vivation, and some of those, like some of the conscious connected breathing, right? If you're a fan of those, you may already be familiar with the fact that they believe that you should either breathe in and out through the nose or in and out through the mouth. And that's because there's some spiritual connection that they have to it, right? When it comes to language of breath, when it comes to things that I do, I'm focusing on what we know about how the physiology interfaces with your breath. I'm focusing on how, like, we've got mountains of research on how it interfaces with our psychology. So that's what I'm focusing on. And so there's differences in how people view this, right? So the more traditional forms of breath work, like rebirthing, vivation, they look at it in a spiritual way where you're going to go in and out through the same channel. And that's just part of their practice. But when it comes to the physiology and the psychology of breathing, when it comes to what we can see and observe with evidence-based approach, there's the most important thing is your rate of breath, and the breath mechanics, and then the rate at which you're inhaling and exhaling. Okay, so those, when it comes to like integrative breathwork styles. So for instance, I might say inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, because for most people, it's very difficult to lengthen an exhale. Maybe I'm trying to get you to lengthen your exhale. Okay, great. Today at the breathwork party that we're going to have in the breath club, we're going to do some sounds. So if you're in the breath club, you're probably familiar with the fact that I like humming. I like making swishing sounds. There's all sorts of things that we do in breath work that are not necessarily in and out through the nose. Like, for instance, you breathe in, just try this, right? Breathe in. And then exhale, making the sound. Now, I inhaled through the nose, exhaled through the mouth. I'm exhaling through the mouth when I'm speaking, right? So it's not like it's always a bad thing to do. And in many cases, it helps us lengthen the exhale. It helps us to stimulate the vagus nerve. It helps us to, there's some other thing that's in there. So Eric, I will say that in everyday life, just in regular everyday life, nasal inhales, nasal exhales, and in the breath work that I like to do, even superventilation, so this over breathing breath work, I recommend in and out through your nose. This is, again, just to kind of give you a recap, this is for the benefit of your nose so that you can use it beyond, just inhales. And actually, there's research that shows that if you inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth, your nose will get stuffed up, like the stuffiness of your nose. So it makes it harder to breathe through your nose if all you're doing is inhaling through it. So if you're interested in nasal health, inhale through your nose, exhale through your nose, right? It also helps us not to go overboard. A lot of times when we get into integrative practices like conscious connected breathing practices, and again, those are sort of the remnants or the descendants of rebirthing, holotropic, vivation, and all of those. Sometimes people go way overboard, right? That's a lot of my clients are people that have been doing Wim Hof for a long time, and they're a wreck. They're coming to me and they're like, for a long time, this really made me feel better. But now I feel like I just kind of, I don't get anything out of it anymore, or I feel like I'm more stressed than I used to be, or I'm more reactive. Well, that's a lot of times people are letting themselves get way out of control with speed, rate, so rate of breath, depth of breath, and they're doing things they don't realize they're doing. So a lot of times we stay with, in language of breath, I'd say 99% of the time, we're staying with nasal breathing only as long as it's possible. We also have mitigations, and we teach you how to train people to use your nose again. A lot of people can't use their nose at first. So there's stair stepping and there's reintegration of the nose into your life that we teach. But if you can, in and out through the nose is my best recommendation. And this is unless there is a technique or a protocol that we're using that calls for exhaling through the mouth. All right. So that's the big caveat. All right. Thank you so much, Eric, for that question. I think a lot of people have that question. I think a lot of times and this is something I always talk about in especially in my last book, Language of Breath, we look at ourselves sort of as a machine, and it's either good or bad. And then I think intellectually, we all know that it's never that simple. But when it comes to practice, we just want to apply something that simple. It's like, just tell me what to do. I'll apply it to every situation. It's not always that simple. But I would say 90% of the time, you're going to want to use nasal only. All right. Thank you so much for that, Eric. Ryan asks, hey, Jesse, I have a question about a technique I've seen some athletic coaches and choir directors use before. I would call it sipping. It involves taking the fullest inhale possible, then continuing to sip air as if sucking through a straw and swallowing the air to expand your lungs beyond what is possible with normal use of breathing muscles. I guess the concept is to stretch out your breathing muscles to increase the amount of air that you can take in with normal breathing, in the same way you would stretch a muscle to increase normal range of motion. I don't use it because I don't like how it feels, tension in the chest, and if something, and as if it could cause an injury if you sipped it too far. So I wonder if you could talk about this. Okay, great. Yeah. So what you're talking about is, so we sometimes we call it packing. So you'll see free divers do this. You'll see, I was not aware that singing coaches or choir directors use this, but yeah, sometimes people will do this. Now, I have never had it as a part of my own personal practice. This is never something that I suggest to people. And this is one of those practices that I don't see any practical application for. I know that, hey, if people are doing it, maybe, I assume they see a practical application for it, but forcing more air into your lungs under the pretense that you're going to expand the lung, or you're stretching it, or that you're somehow getting more out of it, it sort of flies in the face of what we know about how respiration works. And so we all have different size lungs. The taller that you are, usually it seems as though the longer your lungs are. This is why with heart resonance frequency breathing, some people do better with a 5-5 time. Other people do better with a 6-6 time. And, we measure those in different ways. So you're working with what you're working with. And I see more of a potential for injury than I see for any kind of benefit. I don't honestly see any kind of benefit from doing this myself. Okay. And I've never met anyone or seen any kind of research that has led me to believe that packing is a beneficial practice that, especially, maybe, I would say I've been around this industry long enough to know that there's always something that I don't know, but I've never been presented. And I remember early on, when I first started getting into breath work, this was something that people would talk about, and I would see people doing it. And most of the time they're either swallowing air, so it's not even going down into your lungs at that point. You're literally going to burp that up later, or fart it out, I guess. Right. So in that respect, you're sort of just fooling yourself that you're doing anything at all other than swallowing air. But the concept of it, that if I stretch them out, there's going to be some kind of benefit. I don't really see that as something that's a viable thing. I would rather train a person to use their breathing muscles to be more effective. And so this is why that's where I focus with my own personal training and with my clients and with my students at the Language of Breath. We focus on techniques that improve the stability of your core, that also increase the strength of your inhale. So I would rather see someone have a strong inhale and really focus our work on that front, rather than the hopes that I'm going to expand the lung sacs, right? Sometimes, and you'll see this with people hanging upside down, hoping to grow taller, or, you'll see a lot of practices that sort of make sense if you look at things in a certain way. But then it's like, okay, so rather than trying to get just a little bit of something out of this where I do see a higher chance for injury, why not use what you already have more effectively? So we can train your intercostal muscles to expand more forcefully, and we can train them to be to fatigue much later than they normally would. We can train your diaphragm to be more effective in creating that intrapulmonary pressure. And that's ultimately what's going to make that gas exchange really effective is can I expand what I already have? Can I use what I already have, right? And so that's why I've never been a fan of packing. That's why, I appreciate what you call it there, sipping, right? I've never seen it make a difference in anyone I know, the people that I have met in my life, and I've met a lot of people in my career who were very good at this. I've never seen it make any real difference in their practice or in their outcomes. What I do see a difference is the effect if you get your breath mechanics really well. If you work on really expanding your sinuses so that you can use your nose really well. Learning how to know the difference between the time to use your nose versus the time to use your mouth. Those are the things I see really move the needle. I just don't see a great benefit in trying to stretch your lungs by adding additional intrapulmonary pressure to them. So yeah, that's a great question. You see that out there. People who are doing it look like they're really confident that it works or that they're doing something. So yeah, I appreciate that question. Let's see. The next question was a DM. Bear with me just a second. I'm pulling that up. Oh yeah. Okay. So here, yeah. Okay. So actually I had two different people ask me questions about this, this month. And they both DM'd me. It always happens like this. Like there'll be a bunch of questions sort of about the same thing. So this month, it was about mouth taping. I alluded to this earlier. So the mouth taping issue, you see this on social media. I constantly I'll see athletes taping their mouth shut and to go exercise. And really that's just to show off. Okay. So there is no good reason for a person who is awake to tape their mouth shut unless like you're somehow like you've experienced nerve damage on your lips and you're just kind of walking around where you can't use your lips. Okay. Your lips work. Your lips are there. And as long as you can consciously close your mouth, that's the whole purpose of the mouth tape in the first place. So using mouth tape is something that I see, and like I was mentioning this earlier, when you see things on social media, when you see things on YouTube, you're usually seeing them with a pretty big delay. You're not usually, yes, everyone claims it's the new science and stuff, but we save those things for our clients. We save those things for the people that are really willing to invest their time and money into us because we want to make these things worthwhile, right? We want to say, okay, so this is the best science that we can offer, and I'm going to make this personalized for you. Now, having said that, mouth taping when you're asleep has become very popular. And if you've read my books, I reference mouth taping. It's something that is really common. And this is something that I've seen people apply to a lot of different issues. Most of us, right, realize I am mouth breathing at night. This is causing me to breathe faster than I normally would breathe because it's probably so it's lending itself to shallow breathing while I'm asleep, which means I'm not getting as deep or as restful of a night's sleep. And this is something that cascades and it leaves me not feeling well the next day. It leaves me feeling unrested the next day. And so this is why I mouth tape. This is why I mouth tape at night. So I'm going to mouth tape in order to get a better night's sleep and a deeper rest. Okay, so those are reasonable reasons. I realize I'm mouth breathing, and I realize I'm not getting as good a night's sleep. I'm going to try mouth breathing and see or I'm going to try mouth taping and just notice to see if there's a difference in how rested I feel. And if you have like a sleep tracker or something like that, those are also great things. Observing where your resting heart rate goes is another fantastic thing to notice if there's objective differences when you mouth tape and when you're not mouth taping. Some of the easy ones is also, do you wake up and have dry mouth? Or do you have terrible breath? Halitosis? Those are all hallmarks of a mouth breather. And if you're mouth breathing 8 hours a night, okay, so these are reasonable things to say, okay, it seems as though I may want to consider mouth taping. I have met people, and there are many people who believe that mouth taping will cure like sleep apnea, or that it's something that, it's just sort of a carte blanche thing. I'm going to mouth tape and, I'm not going to check in with myself to see if this is even helping. And so I would want to caution when mouth taping. Okay. So if you're mouth taping and you've been doing it a long time and you're getting these positive results, don't worry about it. You're fine. But it is something when you're suggesting to another person, hey, maybe you should mouth tape. You want to bring those things up. You want to make sure the person is not suffering from some kind of obstruction already. It is nice to be able to open your mouth if for some reason that's the only place where you can breathe. And so what I would recommend is if you are unsure, or if you think you have some of these issues, to get a sleep study. So a sleep study, you go to your doctor, you say, hey, I'd like you to conduct a sleep study. And there's a whole process where they'll be able to determine approximately what your sleeping habits are. If you have, like for instance, sleep apnea, all those things, and they can give you a lot of information. Assuming that you do not have, for instance, like obstructive sleep apnea or any form of sleep apnea, and you're just looking for a deeper night's sleep, great. Mouth tape. But you want to be careful. And this is one of those things like, I bought mouth tape for my son. I would go into his room at night. I got home late, and I go in, we do this thing. I kiss him on the head, not trying to, brag about my dad rights, but this is one of the things I go in, maybe I'm feeling guilty because I'm a dad and I didn't get to, put him to bed. I don't know, dads, if I'm traveling, I'm like, oh man, I didn't get to put my son to bed. So I go in there, and he always had just this, this just right out of the mouth. And so I was like, okay, so I want to encourage you not to have that. Here's what we're going to do. So there's a certain kind of sleep tape that goes around his mouth. It doesn't force the mouth shut. So if there is a time when he just has to breathe through the mouth, he can do it. It also doesn't scare him, so he can actually go to sleep. And then before we even did that, we made sure that he could, while he was awake, we had this on, we made sure that he could be mouth taped in that way for at least 30 minutes before going to actually say, okay, let's try this, let's go to sleep. We do want to be careful with how we use some kind of an obstruction to breathing. And to just say that it's good for a lot of people, therefore it's good for all people, that's oversimplifying something that shouldn't be oversimplified in that way. So I had Bonnie, and who else was it? Hang on. Bonnie and Corey, who asked about this, and they both sort of just wanted me to talk about it because they were considering trying it. There are other things that you can do besides mouth taping. Okay, so one of the things that I do whenever I just can't mouth tape is I push my pillow right here. I take a pillow, I put it right here. And it's just enough to remind me to keep my mouth closed. Now I get bed beard, If you bearded guys, you know what bed beard is like. Everyone knows what bedhead is. Bed beard is like whenever you wake up and your beard is like going 50 degrees this way and all these other things. So hey, it gives me a bad case of bed beard, but it's worth it, in my opinion. And I personally sleep better. Okay. And I will notice that it's especially helpful whenever I'm really tired. Man, I've been putting in some heavy workouts, or maybe I've been traveling a lot. I haven't, you know how it is. Those are the times whenever I really need to either mouth tape or put something there to help me keep my mouth from being open. So anyway, those are my thoughts on mouth taping. It's, as with everything, it is not a one size fits all. Okay. And this is why when we train breath workers in the language of breath worker school, we teach you how it all works. Once you understand, and it's there's a lot of complexity in it, and it's one of those things where we simplify it as much as we can without oversimplifying it. So once you start to understand how all these things work with your psychology, that's the big thing everybody always misses, right? It influences your autonomic nervous system and therefore your physiology. But once you start to really put the psychology into play and make this your main focus, you understand that it's far more complex what you're working with. But the beauty is you can start to personalize things way better. It's not just, hey, what's a good technique for I need to go to sleep and I can't get to sleep. It's not just what's a good technique for this, what's a technique for that. It is, how can I help a person live a much better life? How can I help myself not need breath work to get through the day? Right? So I always say, I don't go to the doctor just to go to the doctor because I love going to the doctor so much, right? So whenever we work with clients, we work with people in a way that's like, okay, so we're going to retrain this relationship that is you. We're going to really help with making this a better relationship so that it's going to work for you instead of working against itself. And so that's the language of breath difference. Now, having said that, it is, 20 minutes until the hour. So on the next hour in the Breath Club, we get together for the breath party. So we only once a month. So, and then they're all recorded, and man, last month's was insane. I don't know how I'm going to beat last month's. Last month's was just epic. I'm going to try to do it. I've got a pretty good sequence that I've been working with. Actually, if you were at the link, we did the Elemental Wellness Retreat at Sam Valley. I'm going to be using that sequence. I think maybe a variation of that today in the Breath Club. So if you haven't joined the Breath Club, you can just Google Patreon Jesse Coomer or Midwestern Method. You go to Patreon/Midwestern Method, or you can go to the landing page here on YouTube, and there's a button that'll take you straight there. We're going to be meeting in 20 minutes. I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you for hanging out with me. And I'll look forward to seeing you on the inside of the Breath Club in just 20 minutes. Thanks so much. Have a great month. Thanks for all these amazing questions, guys. Keep them coming. And, don't forget to go out there and be kind to one another. Don't want to forget that. That is a Midwestern Method staple. See you guys next time.